Alright, so welcome to this video for drawing some histograms here for our ideal car data set. We're going to start off by naming our cells. We're going to select our box, go over to Formulas, create from selection, and here we're going to create a name based on the rows. If we go over to the name box here and type in economy, we'll see that that column B has been named economy. And so the first column will be economy, then medium, then luxury. So let's copy those names, paste them over here, and just do a few quick summaries of that data. We'll calculate the average, the standard deviation, perhaps the min and the max as well. And so we'll simply do that with our formulas. Equals the average, and then instead of putting in the cells, we'll put in the name block, so equals average of economy. Right, and we can now do that for standard deviation, so equals STD DEV for standard STDEV for standard deviation of economy, MIN and MAX for min and max of economy. And once we've done that, we can simply copy those cells over for medium and luxury, and then what we'll do is we'll do search and replace medium with economy, luxury with economy as well. Right, so we'll just simply take these four descriptives that we've calculated and then copy those over for medium and luxury. Right now they'll be hardwired to the economy array, but if we select, let's go up the top here, if we select those four cells for medium, go over to home, and then far away to the right here, and if we find and select and then replace, and what we're going to do is we're going to replace economy. Right, we're going to replace, and so anywhere in that block of cells we have economy, we're going to replace that with medium. Right, so we're going to use the medium named array. Just walk through that just a quick check. We'll do it 4 times. We'll go over here, grab the 4 cells under luxury, do the same thing for luxury. Here we can just simply replace medium with luxury, and we can replace the economy with luxury. And so now we basically have a few descriptives of our data. What we're going to do now is draw a histogram. We're going to go from the min to the max, right? And we'll do that histogram for economy, right? So the smallest demand is 10, and our largest is 24. So we'll just create our list of categories here from 10 through 24. And we'll simply have that as our bins. What we're going to do beside that is calculate the frequency. How many times we sold 10 cars, how many times we sold 11. So we'll name this frequency. And what we're going to do is the frequency function. So we grab that whole block of cells, right? We type in equals frequency, and then equals, under the first bracket we have economy for that economy array, comma, and then our bins are basically this vector with the 10 through 24. We close our bracket, and then we have to hit the Control-Shift-Enter keys together, because this is an array function to fill in that whole block of cells. Another way to do this is with the COUNTIF function. So instead of using the frequency function, we could have used COUNTIF. So COUNTIF economy equals 10, COUNTIF economy equals 11, COUNTIF economy equals 12, etc. That works well here because we have our bins include every possible outcome. Most often our histogram doesn't include, the bins don't include every possible outcome, so the frequency function is far more robust, but sometimes the COUNTIF is easier to understand. Once we have these counts, now we can draw a bar chart, right? So we can insert a column chart, right? So insert column chart, and we basically have the workings of our distribution. We can format this, right? Push the bars together, right? Add labels. So if we click on our axis here, and we can change that axis, instead of being just 1 through 14, we're going to have that 10 through 24. So we're going to change those labels to correspond to that data. If we right click on those, if we right click on the series, we can actually edit that series and change here the gap, make the gap 0, right? So it pushes the bars together. Is typically how we think about a histogram looking. Right, so now we have the proper labels, we have squished together bar charts. We can get rid of that title, just click on it and delete it. And then if you wanted to, we could go back and add some different titles, right? So we can go over to our chart tool here, click on the what entities to add, and we could add a title for the horizontal axis as well as a title for the vertical axis. Right, so you can call them whatever you want. Here I've called them the number of cars rented for the horizontal axis, and our vertical axis is simply frequency. Right, so this would be a very simple looking histogram. What we're going to do now, though, is make it, go to the next step and take our histogram and make it look more like a probability function. Right, so we can sort of more directly calculate probabilities from that. So let's just move our graph over to the side here, create a new column. We'll call that column probabilities. And so what we're going to do now is turn these frequencies to relative frequencies, which are basically probabilities. So if we take our cell entry and we divide it by the sum of all the counts, make sure you lock that sum, right, F4, and then copy down. And so now we've transformed all those counts into relative counts, and those relative counts are basically probabilities. So we can now go back, apply, rinse, and repeat, and insert a bar chart again, or a column chart, and that chart will look the same. It will just have a different y-axis, where that y-axis now is these relative counts versus absolute counts. Right? So we think of that more as a traditional probability function, right? So we can go back as before, change the x-axis labels for the 10 through 24. We can add our titles, right? And so now we have the x-axis again as the horizontal axis here as the number of cars rented. In addition to actually having the probabilities, we can have the cumulative probabilities, we call the CDF, where that is the probability that demand is less than or equal to a number versus a probability that it's equal to a number, right? And so here we can simply keep a running sum of those. So we start with our first one, and then we just add to it the adjacent probabilities, right? So here we have the running sum of our probabilities. And so that's basically what we refer to as a cumulative distribution function, or we can call it CDF. And now we can simply copy that and insert it into our graph, right? So copy it, click on your graph to paste special, and when you paste special, you insert it as a new series, right? And once we have that new series, we can go back and change it from a bar graph to a line graph, right? You'll have to do this under the Chart Tools design window, right? So click on those bar charts, go to our design, and click on our chart type. Make sure you click Series 2, change it to a line graph, and while you're at it, check the little box to make it on the secondary y-axis, so we have the same scale for each of those. And so now we have the probabilities and we have the cumulative probabilities as a line. Alright, so we have both of those on our graph. Right? And so we could just change the scale. We know that the CDF, the highest it goes is 1, so just for formatting reasons we might want to just change that secondary y-axis. Right, so now we have those two guys on there. And we could also plot the inverse, not the inverse, but instead of the CDF, 1 minus the CDF, so the probability that demand is less than or equal to a number. So demand is never smaller than 10, so we start off at 1. And the probability that demand is less than or equal to 11 is 1 minus the probability of 10, etc. All right, so we're going to start this guy off at 1 and decrease it down to the probability that demand is equal to 24. Right, so now we have both the probability that demand is greater than or equal to a number, and the probability that demand is less than or equal to the number. All right, so we're going to have both of these guys on our graph, right? And they'll simply both end at one ends at 1 and one starts at 1, right? And we use these, as we talked about in class, for different purposes for making decisions in our case. Right, so again, we can copy that, go over to paste special, add that new series. The nice part now is Excel recognizes that this is the same sort of series as before, and it has this line graph, again, linked to the secondary y-axis. And now we can go in and format that. Right? Let's get rid of these colors. All right? And again, whenever you're not typically going to print off in color, you're going to print off in black and white. So we typically want to have everything as some shade of black, right? And so now we change our different colors to different line types. So one of our lines may be dotted, the other one may be solid. We'll change our bars from being blue to some light gray, right? So try and remember to use shades of gray versus colors, because most often when your documents are produced, they're printed in black and white, and those colors become hard to discern once we're in black and white. So now we have our finished graph. Let's make sure it's properly labeled. So let's go back as we did before and add some axis titles. All right. So once you're in the chart design section, we can go over here and add these different things one by one. So axis titles horizontal, right? So you can call it demand, you can call it number of cars rented, whatever you think about. And we can have basically our probabilities on the primary y-axis on the left-hand side, and on the secondary y-axis, or on the right-hand side, we have the cumulative probabilities, right? And so this would be a useful tool for us to have for making our stocking policies for our ideal car, as well as our upgrade policies for our ideal car. And that basically completes our discussion of histograms and their translations to probability functions and CDFs.